Hello, friends. This is Confessions with Amy, and I'm glad you're visiting my channel. Here we share new confessions every day.
I was in Houston for a conference. For the second day in a row, I sat in a hall where the air was a couple of degrees colder than it should be, and listened to speeches that merged into a single stream of corporate mantra: scalability, innovation, strategic partnership. My laptop had long since gone to sleep, but I kept staring at the screen as if something important was about to happen. And then the phone rang. I didn't look at the screen right away. When I did look, the name appeared large: Michael. Husband. A call from him in the middle of the day wasn't exactly uncommon, but rather an alarming exception. I stepped out into the hallway, holding the phone to my ear, trying to suppress my anxiety. He began to speak without any preliminaries. "I'm not going to delay. Just listen." I froze at the window. An endless line of cars flowed below. "I've decided that it's time for us to break up. I sold the apartment. I'm staying with Laura now. Good luck finding a place to live, Caroline." All. No explanation. No sorry or "we'll discuss it later." Just those words of his, like he was passing me mail that he forgot to give me. Something clicked briefly in my head, then shut down. No rage, no panic, no questions. Just empty. And then, somewhere in the silence, I heard my own voice. "Good. I hope you do well. Bye, Michael." I disconnected the call. I stood there for a few more seconds, looking at my phone screen, at my reflection in the glass. I don't know if I expected him to call back. That it was all a joke? No. He said it clearly. Dry. Emphatically calm. He made up his mind. Without me. And well, I'll take mine, too. Over dinner that night, I talked to two junior analysts in Seattle about new supply chains and Italian suppliers, as if nothing had happened. One of them, Josh, asked me something about my family, and I said, "My husband left today. I called this afternoon. He said that he sold our apartment and now lives with another woman." The faces around the table froze. I took a sip of my Pinot Grigio and added, "Honestly, it's a relief. I just didn't know I needed to start over yet." They nodded, the way people can nod when they don't know what to say. I wasn't offended. I didn't expect any sympathy. I didn't need it. I was already rebuilding. Later, in my hotel room, I sat at the window for a long time without turning on the light. The city outside glowed neon and sunset gold. From the height of the 24th floor, everything looked distant, alien. Surprisingly, I didn't feel abandoned. It seemed to me that this moment was not the end, but a pause. Just like before the spread in a novel. It was on that night that I remembered that 2 years ago, when Michael and I were buying an apartment, I had insisted on doing everything for myself. Then it was a matter of practicality. He grumbled, but gave in. I opened my laptop, found the contact for Julian Marshall, our real estate lawyer, and wrote him an email. Then, in the early hours of the morning, I booked a flight back to Chicago. Not at the end of the week, as planned, but the day after tomorrow. And I rented a hotel in the center, close enough to be close, and far enough away not to feel trapped again. When I got up in the morning, the face in the mirror looked different. Not broken, but reassembled. I gave the presentation as if nothing had happened. People were laughing in the right places, writing down every word. I saw someone from the sales department come up afterwards and say, "Damn, Caroline, you were great today." Just a blow off. I just nodded. He didn't know that I spent the night on the verge of collapse and didn't fall. And it gave me a sense of power. Even freedom. Chicago. Friday. As the plane began to descend, I stared out the window at the city and tried to figure out what I was feeling. Home? No. Just an entry point. The place where the second part begins. At the airport, everything was standard: suitcases, other people's conversations, the smell of coffee and disinfection. I didn't feel a single emotion as I stepped out into the cold March air at the terminal. It was amazing. I always hated that moment, coming back from business trips. And now? I was just on my way now. Only now on your way. A taxi took me to a hotel on River North. I'd chosen the place for a reason. Michael and I had once rented an apartment here, 10 minutes walk away. I felt like I was going back to my old self, but not the same one. I didn't go to the apartment right away. I didn't want to go in there as a battered wife, but as someone who had a plan. The first step is to meet Julian. We were sitting in his office, looking out over the lake. He put in front of me copies of documents confirming that the apartment was really registered for me and only for me. Michael signed the papers, but didn't bother to read them. He wasn't interested in who the official owner was. Then not interesting. Now it's his disaster. He had no legal authority to make the transaction, Julian said, flipping through the folder. And if the buyer wasn't notified that it wasn't the owner who was selling, then the deal is invalid, I finished. He nodded. I knew it would take time. A trial is possible. Conversations with a realtor, with a buyer who is furious to find out that he has acquired illegally alienated property. But the main thing was different. The apartment was still mine. Both legally and morally. The next morning I went there. The house was painfully familiar. Every crack in the entryway, every smell. At the entrance, of course, my old key no longer worked. New locks. I didn't break in. I just sat in the car by the side of the road and waited. Half an hour later, he appeared. Michael. He would leave the house in sweatpants and a water bottle in his hand. Next to him is her. Laura. 10 years younger. Too thin down jacket, too long nails. They were laughing. He touched her back as he had touched mine before. They didn't notice me right away. I got out of the car and walked straight toward them, not speeding up. He looked up and paled. Not out of fear. From surprise. He didn't think I'd be back so soon. I didn't think I'd show up at all, not broken, not begging. Caroline. I handed him the folder. You should read this. This is a copy of the documents confirming that the apartment is still mine. Just mine. You sold someone else's property. The transaction will be cancelled. The lawyer is already working. And the buyer will most likely sue you for fraud. Have a nice day, Michael. I turned to Laura and nodded at her. Did you know that he didn't own an apartment? Or did he lie to you too? She didn't say anything. She just took a step back. I turned and left. I went back to the hotel and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep for the first time in days. At that moment, I realized that this divorce was not a disaster, but a gift. And that the most powerful revenge is not a scandal, but calm and control. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just took back what was mine and walked away, leaving him to drown in the chaos he created. When everything is falling apart, you expect thunder. Internal rumbling, screams, tantrums, tears on the floor. But in fact there is silence. And if you don't fill it with drama, it gives you space. Space for a new one. I rented an apartment. It was small, with brick walls and a view of an alley in Lincoln Park. There was nothing luxurious about it. But there was silence. And the lamp I'd wanted for a long time, but Michael called it Grandma's. It was now in my living room. I thought she was smiling. I bought a French press and started the morning with real coffee, not capsules. On weekends, I went to the market, picked out vegetables as if they were jewelry. Everything felt new, because everything was my choice. I was confident at work. No one knew the details, but there were rumors, of course. In the HR department, someone noticed that my address in the system changed. Colleagues cautiously asked if they needed help. I just smiled and said, "Everything is under control." The truth. And it was true. I didn't just hold on, I managed the process. I needed to feel that my life is not something that happens to me, but something that I build up step by step. I once met Michael by accident. On the street. He was walking alone, wearing a jacket, but his rumpled shirt showed that he was in a hurry. I was wearing my coat, carrying a bag over my shoulder and coffee in my hand. He paused, as if to speak. I nodded politely. But she didn't stop. She passed by. And I felt a strange sensation, not gloating, not satisfaction. Ease. Michael was part of the past. And the way he disappeared from my life made room for me. In the second month after the breakup, I started running. Not because it was necessary to return the form or prove something. I just wanted to feel my body move. How the heart beats. How the lungs work in the cold spring air. I started drawing again. A dusty box of oil paints sat on my mezzanine floor for 10 years. I took it out, set up an easel, and in the evening, while the speakers played jazz, I painted my first canvas, for no one. Just for myself. Sometimes I found myself wondering what the old me would say if I saw all this. I'd probably be surprised. Or maybe she was proud. The apartment was still on trial. We were preparing the documents. The lawyers worked. Michael tried to stall for time, but he had neither the resources nor the arguments. Soon it will officially be mine again. I didn't know what to do with it yet. Go back there? Sell it? Give it to someone? I decided to take my time. I wasn't living someone else's scenario anymore. And then one Sunday, as I sat on the windowsill with a glass of orange juice, I suddenly realized something amazing. I didn't think about him anymore. I didn't analyze it, I didn't imagine him with Laura, I didn't replay scenes from the past. I was thinking about myself. About where to go in the summer. About what kind of music to take for a run. About what colors will suit the next picture. An almost destroyed life was the best foundation for a new one. And I, Caroline Miller, 43, was just getting started. I wasn't looking for anything. I just wanted to wait out the rain. It was the end of April. In the evening, the sun was promised, but in the morning the sky turned gray, as if the city was exhausted after a long winter. I was walking around the old town without any purpose. Just to be out of the apartment. Sometimes freedom is the ability to go wherever you want without explanation. When the rain started to fall, I hid in the first door that was close by. It was a bookstore. Small, old-fashioned. With a wooden floor, soft light, and the smell of dusty paper and coffee. I've always loved these stores. They reminded me that the world is full of voices, and each one has its own truth. I wandered between the shelves. Slowly. She picked up a collection of Joan Didion short stories and ran her finger along the cover. I opened it at random, read a paragraph, and suddenly caught it not even a sound, but a movement nearby. If you like Didion, check out Wallace. There's less comfort there, but maybe you don't need it right now. I turned around. Man. Tall, in his early 40s. He was wearing glasses with slightly scratched frames and the wet shoulders of his jacket. He was holding a volume. Indeed, David Foster Wallacean looked as if he really believed what he was saying. I smiled not too wide. Sometimes less comfort is just what you need. I'm Caroline. Adam. Nice to meet you. We didn't talk for a long time. He recommended a couple more books, then muttered something about caffeine and walked away toward the cafeteria at the back of the room. I wandered around the room for another 10 minutes, then followed him. He was sitting by the window with a latte and a laptop. I didn't work, just stared out the window. The rain was almost over, and there were drops on the glass. I nodded at the empty chair. He looked up, not surprised, not tense. Just a light, tired warmth. Of course. We talked about books, the weather, the stupid articles you read at 2 in the morning. He said that he works in a publishing house, edits popular science texts, although in his youth he dreamed of writing plays. I told her how I'd almost given up painting, and how I'd only come back to it when the house I'd grown used to was gone. He didn't ask about the divorce. I didn't mention a name. But everything between the lines was there. There was no flirting. There were no attempts to please. Simple honesty wrapped in a touch of irony. It's an amazing feeling to talk to a man without being defensive. When we separated, he didn't pick up the number. He didn't offer to meet me. Just said, "If fate it also likes repetition. Maybe we'll meet again in the biography department." I went outside and it wasn't raining anymore. Only reflections in puddles. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I wasn't on the wreckage of life. And on something that starts throbbing again. That night I found Wallace on the shelf. I opened it and started reading. It was hard, deep, and unforgiving. But the truth alive, naked is sometimes better than any consolation. It's been almost 6 months. The trial ended in early June. The apartment officially belonged to me again. Michael's lawyer didn't try to challenge the decision, there was nothing to challenge. He was left with debts, a tarnished reputation, and, from what I've heard, no longer with Laura. I felt neither gloating nor regret. Just a light one, how predictable. I sold that apartment. Not because I wanted to cut off the past, I already did. I just didn't want to live in my memories, even if they were now under my control. I didn't buy a new one. I rented a loft, small, bright, with windows facing south and a mosaic on the floor that someone had laid out by hand about 20 years ago. Every morning I woke up to the sun, not to worry. Adam and I met again, as he said, in the biography department. First by accident. Then with coffee. Then in the gallery. He took his time and didn't ask. He was just there, as if he knew that there was an ocean of experience behind the silence. He saw me. And I didn't try to fix it. When I first invited him to my apartment, he walked around the apartment, touched the mosaic with his foot and said, "You live like you're building a book. Every corner is like a chapter." I smiled. "Which one are you in?" He came closer, barely touching her. "The one I haven't written yet." We didn't talk about the future. We didn't make any plans. It wasn't getting to know each other again, or starting over from scratch. It was to continue. Continue to live, feel, choose. I still ran in the morning. Still drawing. I still felt a tingling sensation in my chest as I sipped the strong orange coffee. But now there was someone who didn't put me in the frame. Who didn't need my weakness to feel my strength. And I didn't need his approval to know. I'd done it. I've changed. I am free. One evening, I stood at the window and looked out at the city, illuminated by the July sunset. Adam was lying on the sofa, reading, barefoot, with a cup of tea. I thought this was the real finale. Not a storm. Not revenge. And the peace in which you are not afraid to be yourself for the first time. Michael became the past. Quiet, distant. A thing you remember but don't carry. Like an old book, important, but not reread. And I, Caroline Miller, 43, finally felt. That happiness wasn't built on rubble. It grows out of nothing when you decide to plant something alive. And this is always a choice. My choice.